How's it going, guys? Hope everyone's doing well. Thanks for clicking on to this episode of the Phil Talk Sports Podcast. Recording this on a rainy Saturday afternoon. Got a great show for you. Hockey play-by-play announcer and Colorado Avalanche superfan Nick Gimbel comes on the show for the third time this hockey season to talk about his Avalanche winning the Stanley Cup, defeating the Tampa Bay Lightning, and plenty of great stuff to talk about with that. Before we get to that, though, some crazy news in the college football world. USC and UCLA are joining the Big Ten of all places, because geography be damned, apparently. And there's a lot more questions than we have than answers for this right now. I'm sure I'll do a whole episode on this in the next week or two. And frankly, other teams might be jumping conferences by the time I record this. So I really didn't want to spend a whole lot of time with this. I just wanted to throw it at the beginning of the interview I have with Nick, which again is a great interview. Stick around. Whether you like hockey or not, there's a lot of great stuff in there. I just wanted to give my initial thoughts on this. I mentioned, geography be damned, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Flying to the other side of the country for every single away game that isn't each other doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And clearly they're trying to make the Power 5 the Power 2 with the SEC and the Big Ten. And they don't really care about anybody else for whatever reason. Of course, money is a driving force behind this because it makes no sense otherwise. And with money being the choice behind this, they don't care about tradition. They don't care about rivalries that they've had for the existence of their school and their program. They certainly don't care about any other sport that their school has. I mean, for me being a UCF fan, one of the best things about it is one of your teams is always playing. Like, sure, football is king, and I love football, but I also like going to baseball games and cheering for that, and basketball games and cheering for that, and soccer, and softball, and whatever else you can think of, that you can go and support your team and go out and enjoy a game and have a good time. This clearly wasn't thought through all the way, because you look at, for those that don't know, UCLA and USC, while they've been a little down in football and in basketball a lot lately, they kind of crush all like the track and field sports and things like that. And who knows what's going to happen with those now? What conference are they going to be in? Because they don't have the budget to be flying. The football team might, but they don't have the budget for that sort of thing. Are they going to regionalize a conference for all that other stuff? Are they going to be in the Pac-12 for everything except football? I don't think the Pac-12 is interested in that. Is the Pac-12 going to survive? Is something going to happen with the Big 12? A lot of questions that need to be asked. But to me, the difference is, because someone can tell me, like, oh, you didn't care when your school was jumping to a new conference. The difference with that is every one of our programs is going to that. Like, for an example, the Big 12 doesn't have a soccer conference. They don't sponsor soccer. So we actually got our soccer teams in the Sun Belt Conference, which is actually one of the Premier League, no pun intended, but a Premier League of soccer collegiately. You can look at the Sun Belt as maybe the second best soccer conference in the country, and things like that. Well, you have to think of all these other sports. So I'm very much annoyed by it right now. We'll know more about it later. The other thing that confused me is this came out and was approved in like the same day. So clearly they've been working in the shadows, lying to people, not giving people the right information. It's a very USC thing to do. And make no mistake about it, this is USC's doing. It was just a situation of, yeah, if you take us, though, you got to take UCLA. That's like the one rivalry I guess they care about, because they're both in LA, I guess. So that's probably all I got to say about this right now. I'll probably have a whole episode about it in the next week or two. We'll probably have more movement between now and then. The Big 12 looking to bulk up to maybe when this all shakes out, they'll be the third best conference, because the ACC isn't looking as strong as it used to. A lot of ifs, a lot of buts, a lot of maybes. So I just wanted to get all that out in the open and hope to do another episode on this soon. But until then, enjoy this interview with Nick Gimbel. All right, joining me now to complete his hat trick of appearances on the show this year, Nick Gimbel is back for the third time, and there's something really important I want to ask him about that had happened. I believe it's been a full week already, which is crazy. Nick, what did you think of Shoresy? I'm sure you watched the whole show by now.
I have watched the whole show. Shoresy's very good. Made me laugh a whole bunch. And there's actually one parallel that I'll bring from Shoresy when we get towards the end of our Stanley Cup talk.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that later. But yes, congratulations to Nick and his Avalanche. I don't know if I can call it an upset, but defeating the Tampa Bay Lightning, stopping the three-peat, winning their third cup in franchise history, and the first in 21 years. This is a dumb question, but how did it feel?
It was stressful because I was working at the time.
I cannot believe, not to cut you, I cannot believe that you were working, like, with a series type thing. Like, if it's a Super Bowl, you can work to get one day off. It's hard to get 6 to 7 individual days off. But when you told me you were working on like a clinching day, I couldn't believe it. But continue.
When you work for the mouse owns you. It,
There, I take
it
back what I said. That makes sense.
yeah.
I forgot that that was your employment nowadays.
Yeah, so when you work for the mouse owns you in every single bit of time that you have. I was fortunate enough to manipulate my work day to the point where I was able to get to my phone, open up my streaming app, and turn the game on with 5 minutes remaining in the third period, and I was able to watch the entire cup ceremony. So the 2 to 3 hours pregame and during the first 55 minutes of the game where I had no clue what was going on,
Hmm.
it was a little stressful. But then I was able to rush and see that there was a 2-1 lead with 5 minutes left, and in my head I'm thinking, oh, that's not holding up. We need one more,
Sure,
and
yeah.
no, they didn't need one more.
So when you were able to get to your phone and stuff, are you in your car? Are you in a break room and everybody's watching you go crazy? What is your
I'm in a
surroundings?
break room and everybody's watching me with a lack of oxygen. I'm not breathing.
Sure.
I'm holding in screams. I'm trying my hardest not to shout in the middle of a break room, but I must have looked like I was having a severe panic attack in the middle of a break room.
Did anyone else care? Were there any Lightning fans? Did anyone else like care what they get? Because in a public place like that, you might run into other people that would want to see the end of that game. But was anyone else care at the time?
It didn't look like anybody else had any interest in the game. Everybody was watching their own little YouTube videos. There were only about 7 or 8 other people in this small little break room that we had. Um, One of the TVs that doesn't have a remote was on like NBC or whatever. I'm like, really? We work for the mouse and you can't put ABC on the TV? But that's
Yeah,
beside the point,
that's a
I
good
guess.
point. I mean, and the streaming app that you had to use was a Disney property too, so I'm sure they were happy. Assuming you were using the Plus for that,
Yeah.
so they're probably happy you're using that. I actually wanted to bring that part of it up. It seemed that more outlets, because this was the first year we talked about this last year about ESPN and NHL being an ESPN property again for the because there was a gap in time that it was an NBC thing and it used to be ESPN. It hadn't for a long time. I felt like because of that, this cup felt more important to even the casual viewer because there was more talk about it on the regular shows. I don't know if you noticed the difference of like if you want to watch a hockey show even throughout the season, there was just more talk about it on the bigger stations. So it almost made it feel a little bit more important.
Well, and it all goes back to what we talked about before the cup final started, was that this was the series that the hockey world needed to see.
Hmm.
This was the chalk matchup. This was the two-time defending cup champions against the I think this is the first time in I don't know how many years where the Avalanche were preseason cup favorites in the odds makers, and they won the Stanley Cup. This was as chalk of a East versus West matchup as you can get. So all eyes were on it, but it was under a magnifying glass, not only being an ESPN property, but this was the first time ever that the entirety of the Stanley Cup final was slated to be on ABC or NBC or CBS. It wasn't a mix of
Right.
ABC, ESPN, ESPN2, or NBC, NBC Sports Network. This was the first time it was slated. If you had a cable hooked into the back of your TV into an outlet in your wall, you could watch the Stanley Cup final. You didn't have to pay for it. And it just helped to get more eyes on what was, in my eyes, the ideal Stanley Cup final for everybody involved.
Yeah, it just seemed like it was all cups are created equal at the end of the day. I mean, even when people try, and in other sports too, really all championships are created equal. People like to talk about like the bubble for the NBA or the NHL. That's still a Stanley Cup. In years, with the Lightning being two-time defending champions, nobody brings up, oh, by the way, one of those was in a bubble. A cup is a cup. They're all created equally. But like it just the amount of extra eyes, like you said, the simplicity of what it took to watch the Stanley Cup this year, I think was extremely helpful. Like you said, all you needed is if you had cable, and then the ESPN Plus thing made it that much more to people. Maybe they weren't even home, like you said, you weren't home, and were able to still pull the game up with ease, and I think that was very helpful. The last episode I recorded, I just did an episode about myself, and it was when you guys took care of business at home and you were up to nothing. Um, some people were talking sweep. I never really thought that was something that would happen. I think the Lightning are a little too good for that. And if I remember correctly, is Game 3 the game that you went to? Because you were able to actually.
Yes.
So
Yes,
that was.
I somehow was fortunate enough to make my way to game three, and that's the game that the Avalanche lost 6-2. And
Right.
it kind of goes into the theory that, not theory, but the premise that I have of, for an Avalanche fan, we won the Stanley Cup. That's what makes it the perfect series. But in terms of a casual viewer, this was the most ideal Stanley Cup final. You had game one go to overtime. You had game two, the home team, the Avalanche, had a 7-0 dominant win. Shift the series to Tampa Bay, the home team had a dominant 6-2 win. Game four was settled in overtime again. The whole, I'm sure we'll get into that. The was it too many men on the ice for Nazem Kadri, and then another game five and game six were both 1-goal games. Each home team had a blowout win to give their fans the crazy satisfaction, and then the other four games were settled by 1 goal. That's peak entertainment in my eyes. And I was sad to see the Avalanche lose the one game I got to go to and watch in its entirety,
Sure.
but my wife's a Lightning fan,
Ah,
so she was worried that, because she asked me before the game even started. She goes, "If the Avalanche lose, is your mood going to be ruined for the next week?" And
mm,
I said, "No, I'm not going to be upset if the Avalanche. I'm not going to be miserable if the Avalanche lose,
yeah.
simply because I'm going to a Lightning game, and if the Lightning play well and they win 6-2, those are 6 goals that are absolutely making Emily Arena go bananas."
Yeah.
That was the loudest building I've ever been in, and I honestly wouldn't change it for anything.
So actually, that stems a couple questions for me. One, I think it helps that you went to game three. I think if you're at a game six or seven and the Lightning take the win, it probably affects your mood longer than a game three. You could just chalk it up to, I went to a Stanley Cup game. It was the loudest arena I've ever been in, like you just said. So you can still find the positives out of it. Yeah, years from now, you can be like, oh, the year we won the cup, I made it to a game. It was one of the few that they lost. Like, I love Orlando City. They've had a great season this year. They've only lost 2 games at home. The only game I made it to this year was one of those losses. That happens sometimes. So again, the fact that it was game three, I think helps, put your mood back in check, and not just you. The same thing would happen to me and anything like that. But let's talk the Lightning fan base for a bit, because I don't think it's insulting to say that even a lot of the diehards, I'd say 70% of the now diehard fans, are still relatively new to the sport. Like, if you took a poll to where you were sitting, I'm sure there were still Lightning fans around you. Do they know they won the cup in 2004? Probably. But could they tell you anything about that season? Probably not. So for you to say it's the loudest arena you've ever been in, I think that's saying, like, the culture, with that word gets thrown around a lot, in sports these days. But the culture built in Tampa, I think, is something to be applauded. And you said even before this series started, Tampa has a good chance, win or lose, to be in a similar position next year. So, like, just to speak to the culture that's been built, because I'm sure you went to Lightning games in years past when the Avs would come to town or something, and I'm sure the culture and the vibe is way different now than it was, 10 years ago, 7 years ago.
Well, forget about the Tampa Bay Lightning in the small scale. Think of the state of Florida in a grand scale. You have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Super Bowl champions, Tampa Bay Lightning, back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. Think of college athletics. The University of Miami is trying to get back to their glory days in football. They're on their way. The University of Florida trying to get back to their winning ways, and Tim Tebow back in Gainesville time and time again, trying to keep that championship atmosphere alive. We're not going to talk about Jacksonville, but
The
the
Rays, even the Rays
yeah,
had that's kind of not where it was, but they had a heck of a run for the past
yeah,
year too. So
the state of Florida is spoiled in terms of sports right now, and it's all the recency bias of what have you done for me lately.
mhm.
And for the Lightning, what have you done for me lately? You've gone to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals. So the the fans will do their research, but we always talk about those fans. Like, think about the New York Ranger fan base. They haven't won a Stanley Cup since 1994, and that's all they bring up.
Yeah.
That the Mark Messier guarantee, we're going to win this game and we're going to go on to win the Stanley Cup. Everybody's response to that was, okay, what have you done for me lately?
Mm.
The past is the past. You can't really bring up too much about it now. They understand who LeCavalier and Marty St. Louis are. They understand who Dave Andrechuk is. They understand all of that, but it is a matter of what have you done for me lately? And in terms of that, the Lightning still have the upper hand on everybody in the NHL.
Yeah, they definitely do. And I mean, you even mentioned uh, the Colorado roster moving into next year is going to take a lot of moving and shaking to even resemble what it is this year. So to take that into account and to accept the fact that there might be a good amount of players that are skating somewhere else next year, what top 3 players were you most happy for to one either win their first cup, a cup to solidify their career, that you were happy that not only that they won but they did it with your team?
So number one for me as a defenseman is Eric Johnson. He was Nobody remembers this guy being a number one overall draft pick of the St. Louis Blues 13 or 14 years ago. He's been through numerous concussions, numerous injuries, multiple knee surgeries. He almost retired after last season. Last year was another second round exit, this time to the Vegas Golden Knights, and he almost retired. And he made his way back to fight for the entire season. And he was the first player that Landeskog handed the cup off to. After he received it from Deputy Commissioner Bill Daley, Landeskog turned around, lifted the cup, gave it right to Eric Johnson. That's a player and a human that has sacrificed every part of his body to get to where he is. And there's a good part of me that believes he's going to retire after being that close to retirement last year and now winning the Stanley Cup. I don't know how much more his body can take. I have a strong feeling that he'll be done this season. If not this season, he'll maybe have one more go at it and then retire at the end of next season, but his career is almost done. Player number 2 is Nazem Kadri. The wrath of St. Louis that he had to endure, all the racism, all the critiques, and all the criticism he's taken throughout the years. He's definitely matured as a human, not just a hockey player. He has always had a short fuse. He's been suspended almost every single Stanley Cup playoffs he's been a part of.
Wow.
And when the Avalanche traded for Nazem Kadri and got rid of Tyson Barrie, my dad specifically said, I don't like how he plays. He gets suspended way too often. He has no control over his emotions. He's going to be a reason we don't win. And that he was the reason we didn't win last year. He got suspended in round 1 and he didn't play at all in the Vegas series, and we lost the Vegas series. And I think he got a stern talking to from our coaching staff and the general managers, and he turned it around, and it showed in the entire roster. Every single series against Nashville, against St. Louis, against Edmonton, and even against Tampa, the opposition was trying to just throw punches, throw dirty hits, try to get the Avalanche to retaliate, and not a single player did. That was seeing Nazem Kadri keep his emotions in check caused the rest of the team to keep their emotions in check, and their power play thrived because of it.
It's funny that we're talking about Thunder and Lightning, and we still, from both of our windows, because it is a rainy Saturday right now, we're hearing Thunder and Lightning. You mentioned your dad just then, and his opinion at that signing and stuff. When you guys went to the game, was it just you and your wife? Because your family's just as big Avs fans as you are, were they able to join you, or how did that all go?
So my parents came into town for Father's Day, and that was the Sunday before that game on Monday the 20th. They unfortunately had to go back to work on Monday night, so they drove back to Virginia. Me and my wife and my sister and her boyfriend were able to go to the game, and my wife sitting to my left and a bunch of other Lightning fans around us, so she was having a great time, and
Sure.
me and my sister in the Avalanche jerseys just down in the dumps for 55 minutes of the game. And then her boyfriend's a Bruins fan, so he had a Bruins polo on underneath of an Avalanche jacket. So he was trying to maintain his sanity throughout the whole night.
Gotcha. So what was like obviously there's a certain way you act when you're an away fan at an away game, right? There's certain like whenever I see like fights and stuff break out in any sport, I'm like, this probably happened because the away fan didn't like. There's a certain way you should act. Did you have any sort of like, uh, whether I don't, not that you're the type to go like starting fights or anything, but did you get any kind of anything outside of like playful fun from fans? You know, being there in the other sweater.
There were the occasional drunk fans around us that were more so throwing nasty chirps at the team itself and at the players, not necessarily directed towards us
Sure.
in the crowd. But I'm as knowledgeable as I think I can be in the sport of hockey. So I was actually answering questions
Yeah.
that people around me were asking, either rhetorically or legitimately asking.
Hmm.
And I remember specifically it was towards the end of the game. Avalanche were already down 5-2 or 6-2, and we pulled Darcy Kemper with like 5 or 6 minutes left because we were on a power play.
Hmm.
And so it was 6-on-4 on the ice, and like three Lightning fans are losing their absolute minds behind us, saying too many, ironically, too many men on the ice. We had six, and again, they're above me right back here. I just look up and go, "We pulled our goalie," and they go, "Oh, thanks." Like
That's
it wasn't a nasty exchange or anything, but I was just like, "We pulled our goalie." So it was obviously I stood up and cheered. I stood up and cheered for the goal that called back because of the offsides.
mhm.
And then we got up and cheered again when we made it 1-0 for real. But then after that, it was just an onslaught of Lightning goals. So it was nothing nasty either way. And I do think you're right that you can't necessarily act as inebriated um, as you can as a home fan, but you can absolutely get up and cheer and be loud and be excited. But no matter which side of the aisle you're on, somebody steps over that line, and it's all downhill from there. But every single Lightning game I've gone to, and even Solar Bears games when I went as an Admirals fan, just it's been great all around.
I mean, I for example, I've been as an Eagles fan, I've been to like a Buccaneer game, and we pull in because Eagles fans have a certain like stigma about them as it is, and we pull into tailgate, and the Bucks fans that we are next to kind of look at each other like, oh great, now we got to deal with these Eagles fans like drinking next to us. And by the time we went into the game, we had made friends with them because like I think it also helps what team it is. If you have no issue with the team, you know, if you're at a Red Wings game, for example, it might be a little bit different conversation going on. So it's really how you act, and I think the turnaround of that is when I go to a UCF game when it's like the South Florida game, and those guys don't know how to act in an away stadium. That's on them, whatever happens. So it really just comes down to I think once you settle in with your role as an away fan, it kind of lets everyone else know, okay, this he's literally just here to watch his team the same way we are. So like, there's no reason to have any issue. You touched on a goal with too many men on the ice, so let's get this out of the way now. I don't follow hockey the way you do, but the way I have interpreted this whole thing is it's almost like holding in football. If you are looking for that call, you can find it very often, to the point that people have found in the same game a goal from Tampa with a similar situation. So that is my limited take on the situation, but you now have the floor.
All right. So a little bit of backstory on this. We've got to explain the process of the line change in both
Yes.
hockey and lacrosse, because those are the only two sports where the term changing on the fly is enacted. Every other sport, baseball, football, soccer, basketball, you have to wait for a stoppage of play to make your substitution.
I would
In
love for
hockey,
basketball to have this. I just want to throw that out there. How entertaining would that be? I mean, soccer,
ring the substitution horn.
soccer, it kind of is the same because it's like the clock's still going. There's just a stoppage of play, so it's very similar. But yeah, in basketball, if they just like slapped the scores table and ran in, that would be hilarious. But continue.
So during the course of play, one player comes off and onto the bench, and the player on the bench leaves the bench and goes onto the ice. They swap places in the middle of play.
As close to
Not,
simultaneously as possible. I would say,
yes.
right? Yeah.
So in the rule book, this is stated in the NHL rule book that there is a quote unquote safe zone that is about 3 to 5 feet in front of the player's bench because there's not enough room on the bench and there would be way too many collisions between teammates if they had to wait for their teammate to get on the bench before they got onto the ice. So there is a rule in place where a player from the ice can be within 5 feet of the bench, and then the bench player comes onto the ice and skates away, making room for the player coming off the ice. That's a line change. That's changing on the fly.
So every
So
single line change for at least a second, there will be too many men on the ice. Like by the way it's designed to
yes.
happen, this will
So
happen every time.
when I'm doing my play-by-play, I call it a wholesale line change. Think of these players are a minute into their shift, they're dead tired, all five of them. They gain the red line and dump it in so that they don't get an icing call. They dump it in, force the defending team to chase it. All five players on the ice rush to the bench. That means that all five players replacing them come off the bench at the same time. At any given time during the game, there are 10 skaters and
Yeah.
one goalie on the ice.
Yeah.
But because none of them are actively a part of the play and close enough to that safe zone, it's not too many men on the ice.
Sure.
It only becomes a too many men on the ice penalty when one of the players leaves the bench too early, or there's miscommunication between the player leaving the ice and the player coming onto the ice, where sometimes the play will be coming back to their defensive end, and the player that's supposed to come off the ice cycles back to try to defend while the player on the bench comes onto the ice and also joins the play, which means now there's one player extra on the ice because the one player
Actively
didn't come off.
actively playing at that point, which would be
Correct.
so
That is where all of this starts to shake down.
mhm.
So again, backstory. This is overtime of game 4. This is, I think it's a 2-2 or 3. It might be 3-3. I forget what the final score was, but it's overtime, sudden death, next goal wins. And this is the biggest, most pivotal game of the series. Avalanche are up 2-1 in the series. If the Avalanche win, they take a 3-1 series lead going back to Colorado. If the Lightning win, they tie the series at 2 apiece. And the Lightning have been known to win 3-game series inside of a 7-game series. If you get to game 5, 6, or 7 tied or only down or only up by 1, the Lightning historically, that's where they make their money.
Yeah.
Is they go on to win those game 6s and game 7s.
Mm-hmm.
So whoever wins this game is most likely going to win the Stanley Cup, and we saw that. Hindsight is 2020.
Yeah. And to their credit, got to game 6. Game 6 was very close.
Yeah.
So it's not like their spirits were. I mean, I'm sure it was in the moment, but
Yeah.
no more than losing 7-0 and coming back to win a game. Like they clearly knew how to bounce back.
Right. So the other big thing with overtime is that the sides are swapped, which means that the player's bench that you're on is closer to your attacking end than normally your defending end, like in periods 1 and 3, which makes it much harder to get a line change because you can't get a line change in your defensive end. You have to get the puck to the red line and dump it in and then try to rush to closer to the offensive side of your ice to get the line change. So that's part number 2, is understanding that the Avalanche bench is on their attacking blue line, closer to the Lightning end. At the end of the shift, Nathan MacKinnon slowly coming back to the bench Nazem Kadri on the bench jumps a little early
Mm.
and joins the play. He skates across the blue line and gets a pass from the Avalanche defenseman, comes in on a breakaway and scores. Now, the problem that everybody has with this is Nathan MacKinnon is too far away from the bench and barely gets to the bench by the time Kadri gets the puck and scores.
Mm.
So everybody is up in arms about Kadri jumping early and MacKinnon not being on the bench, meaning there's 6 players on the Avalanche on the ice at the time that Kadri gets the pass.
So the way I
But
decode that is, by dictionary definition, it could be called.
if this were the second period of game 43 of the regular season, it's too many men on the ice,
Gotcha.
which to me means that it's too many men on the ice of game 4 of overtime of the Stanley Cup Finals.
In a perfect world, yeah.
In a perfect world. But we've seen that the NHL playoff rulebook and the NHL regular season rulebook are two different entities in themselves.
Right.
The calls that players are able to get away with in the playoffs are near murderous.
I mean, we see that in all sports. Like, we just had a great NBA Finals, and a foul in Game 5 or 6 of an NBA Finals is not the same as a Thursday night in Brooklyn. You know, it's just different.
So because of that, the linesman and the referee let this play go. And Kadri goes in and scores. Part number 3, or that was part number 3, is to me, it's too many men on the ice. Part number 4, this is a non-reviewable play.
Hmm.
This is a play that cannot be part of a coach's challenge, and it is not part of the NHL's immediate review of an overtime goal, which means it's up to the 4 officials on the ice. And because they let it go, they let play continue. The Avalanche scored. That's the end of the game. There's no review. There's no looking back on it.
And I think, I mean, that's logical to me just because there is some subjectivity to this call in the first place. It's almost like it's like a pass interference thing. Like, they tried to make it reviewable, but how can you really?
Your analogy of this too many men on the ice situation being exactly like a holding penalty in football, that's exactly it. That's the best way we can describe it. It happens every single line change. It happens every single game. It happens multiple times a minute. But in this scenario, it happened on the biggest stage of the hockey world to give the Avalanche a 3-1 series lead.
So would you agree that the goal that Tampa had with a similar scenario, from my uneducated eyes, similar scenario, would you call it the same type thing, or is that more one way or the other?
So it was a 1-0 overtime win for the Tampa Bay Lightning against the New York Islanders last playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
The exact same thing.
Yeah.
It's I know I've brought it up before, but it was a game in Toronto, so I wasn't there. And this is back in 2012, back when the Admirals won their Calder Cup in the American Hockey League, when John Cooper, the current Lightning coach, was the coach of the Admirals, of the Lightning farm team.
Nice.
It was 0-0 in Game 3 of the Calder Cup Finals, and an Admirals player dumped the puck in on a delayed offsides in overtime. It hit the glass at an awkward place and bounced into the net for an overtime game-winning goal of Game 3 of the playoffs, or of the finals even. Because it was delayed offsides, the goal shouldn't have counted. None of the refs understood that at the time, and the goal stood, and the Admirals went on to win the Calder Cup. So the fact that this has happened in favor of John Cooper twice in playoff runs, and now it's happened once against him, that's just the hockey world.
Sure.
That's just how it goes. It happens every single game. It happens every single year. So again, unfortunate that it happened at this stage. Now, there's 2 things that I need to bring up that we saw post-game. Number 1 is the post-game stat sheet. There are religious statisticians at every single hockey game
Mhm.
I've been one of them at an Admirals game as a fill-in. There are humans sitting up in the press box where their only job is to keep track of who is on the ice at the time of a goal. So again, those 10-person line changes happening is chaos for everybody on the ice and watching.
Mhm.
That post-game stat sheet, which was automatically generated as soon as the goal went in, had 6 skaters and 1 goalie on the ice for the Avalanche when the goal was scored. However, not only was that super wrong, it didn't. I told you Nathan MacKinnon was the player that came off the ice while Kadri came on and scored. MacKinnon wasn't any one of those 6 players.
Okay.
So they
That
had
doesn't really hold up then.
correct.
Yeah.
So everybody was quick to throw that 6 players in a goalie stat sheet out online.
Sure.
And they didn't think to look that, oh, MacKinnon's not even one of these players. So they have a bunch of players wrong.
So the craziest part of
that's debunked number 1.
Yeah.
Not debunk, but there is a still image of MacKinnon off the bench, standing on the ice, trying to get onto the bench as Kadri has the puck.
Yeah.
Showing too many men on the ice for the Avalanche.
Mm-hmm.
In that same picture, if you look on the other side of the ice to the Lightning bench, there are 2 players on the ice trying to get on the bench with 5 skaters on the ice. There is a still picture of 7 Lightning players and 6 Avalanche players on the ice as the Lightning are trying to protest for a too many men on the ice call.
Yeah, I think that's the image that I'm referring to earlier that I probably saw that are
I mean, in the microscope, yes, that was a too many men on the ice that the referees missed.
Mm-hmm.
But in the grand scale of things, it happens every single game. It's just unfortunate that it happened there.
So, from my point of view, the craziest part of that scenario happened immediately after, where the puck kind of gets stuck behind the net cam, and there's it felt like a minute, but it was in reality maybe like 10 seconds that people didn't know where the puck was, and then finally someone notices and the Avs start celebrating, and there's even a point where there's a Lightning player trying to like knock it out, which I don't know how that would have worked, but I don't know if the puck gets wrapped around that camera very often, but that's the first time I've ever seen anything like that.
So it didn't get wrapped around the camera.
Well, it got stuck behind the camera.
It got stuck on. So it's called the part of the net that the puck got stuck in is called the top shelf.
Yeah.
I feel bad that I don't remember this amazing broadcaster's name, but he was the TV broadcaster for the Buffalo Sabres, and every single time, iconic with his raspy voice. Every single time a Sabre player shot the puck and scored at the top part of the net, he goes, "Top shelf where Mama hides the cookies." It's
Love it.
iconic. It is his goal call. And that's exactly where the puck went. It hit the top netting. So if you're looking straight down at the net, you can see a flat part of the net before it goes down to the back of the net.
Mm.
There is a back bar and the red crossbar.
Mm.
The puck went up into the netting and got lodged between the netting and the back bar, and it got stuck there.
Yeah.
So everybody's looking at Vasilevsky thinking he has it,
Sure.
or he's looking on the ice in the back of the net looking for gravity to do its job.
Yeah.
Neither one of those things happened. Bowen Byram, the Avalanche rookie defenseman from center ice, skated as fast as I've ever seen him skate. He was the only person in the entire building that knew that puck was lodged in the top shelf, and went and told the referees it happened. Mm-hmm. Just before Byram got there, Steven Stamkos saw the puck there and just kind of quickly nudged it out of the net. Yeah. Like we don't have video review.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, that was interesting for me to see.
Another history lesson, 2010, overtime, Patrick Kane, Chicago Blackhawks against the Philadelphia Flyers. I know you know this goal.
I do.
It's the exact same scenario. Kane shoots it through the legs, and it gets lodged underneath the net. Nobody knows that the Chicago Blackhawks have won the Stanley Cup except for Patrick Kane. It had that exact same feel of Kadri getting the overtime goal after coming back from a broken thumb. That man is supposed to have a 6-week recovery, and he was out for 18 days. Valeri Nichushkin played with a broken foot. I don't have the exact list of both teams,
Yeah, the
but
Lightning list was insane.
the
That's what I
injuries
had
that
there.
these humans endured to win a silver chalice is incredible.
Absolutely. We got to take a quick break here, and we will come back with Nick and wrap this puppy up. All right, so we're back, guys. Before we wrap this episode up, I did want to share this story real quick. I was also a little relieved when you guys pulled this win out, because earlier this year during Super Bowl time, I had one of my good friends, Joey Graves, on to talk about his Bengals making the Super Bowl, and we all know how that shook out. So if I had you on prior to the Stanley Cup and that didn't go your way, as they say in hockey, two's a streak. So I was going to be worried that this show was bad luck, and obviously that was crumbled before it could even begin. So that was another reason I was happy to see you guys pull this off.
Yeah, and one of the other quotes that happened as the clock hit zero on the Canadian Sportsnet feed was, "The dynasty will be denied and a new legacy has started." In the NHL, a legacy is defined as 3 straight Stanley Cups.
Mm-hmm.
So the Lightning fell 2 games short of that.
Right.
But to me, I would still consider this Lightning team a legacy that ran into a team that was perfectly built for them. No, they were not the best team this season, but to go to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals, I I will look at this team as the best NHL team in the salary cap era. And I think it was yesterday they signed Nick Paul to a 7-year, $2.5 million deal. That's like a $6 or $7 million a year player that they got for 2.5.
Wow.
Just even more so solidifying my thought that they're going to be back with a vengeance next year and for many years to come.
So do they just prefer the term legacy over dynasty? Is that just a hockey term that they prefer?
Yeah, I believe dynasty is just something that they coined with the multiple Stanley Cups in a row, and I don't know exactly what they use to coin legacy,
Mm.
um, but I know that dynasty is set in the NHL as minimum 3 straight Stanley Cups, like the Islanders dynasty and the
Sure.
Oilers dynasty.
Mm. Yeah, I mean the term dynasty or legacy, it's always like there was talk on like the talking head shows like, are the Warriors a dynasty? I'm like, they were a dynasty before this. Like if you win 3 in 6 years or something, if you win more than two in a reasonable amount of time, I think you can call it something a dynasty. But with the precedent being set of winning three straight at different times, that fits it for me. So this wasn't the only thing that your Avalanche were in the news for this past week. A recent 30 for 30 dropped called Unrivaled about the rivalry between them and the Red Wings. Have you got a chance to watch this yet?
I have
Did you
I've
think
gotten a
it
chance to watch it.
accurately did it accurately predict or depict that whole
Of
situation in
course.
your opinion? Yeah.
Yeah, it was the main two talking heads were Darren McCarty of the Avalanche and Claude Lemieux, or I'm sorry, um, McCarty of the Red Wings and Lemieux of the Avalanche,
Hmm.
the two players that had the rivalry, and Chris Draper and who got hit, and Patrick Waugh, and Vernon and Osgood and everybody involved. It is a must watch, not only for a hockey fan, but if you enjoy the rivalries inside of sports, so any college football fan,
Yeah.
you'll very much enjoy this.
Yeah,
And
I'm about 75% of the way through it, and I'm enjoying every bit of it. And to just say that Lemieux was in it uh, doesn't even get to the fact that he's like depicting all this hanging out at like a Red Wings bar,
not
basically.
only is it a Red Wings bar, that's Darren McCarty he's sitting next to. That's his
Right,
bar.
exactly. In front of all these
So
Detroit fans. I mean, that to me, that's like the Malice in the Palace just hanging out in Detroit and talking about it going down. It's the
yeah,
equivalent of that, I feel.
and that's not only a, I don't know how. Of course, I'm not Chris Draper, but I don't know how much Chris Draper has truly forgiven Claude Lemieux for the hit that he threw, but the fact that these humans are able to sit down and have a discussion off the ice, even though it's this many years later.
Yeah.
The fact that they're able to do this and put the game aside, the players are able to put the game aside before the fans, and
I
that
think
really
that's usually
that
the
really
case,
says something about the mental switch that hockey players have to have between I'm going to ruin you and your chances at playing this game for the next 60 minutes that we're on the ice together versus hey, let's go grab a beer after the game.
the level of like I guess maturity is the word that you see, and like even the like I think to be allowed to sit in on this, you have to agree to something or whatever, but like just the respect I guess that was given after the fact to just calmly tell his side. Like I mean, maybe there was outtakes of like drunk Red Wings fans like yelling things. Maybe that happened, but from what is depicted, it just seemed like a good, mature reflection of a crazy time in the '90s. And like, I don't think I've seen a bad 30 for 30. These things are home runs like almost every single time. But between this and like the Wayne Gretzky one getting traded, like they they capture like the hockey ones, I think, particularly well.
My favorite 30 for 30 aside from this unrivaled one is actually the big shot one with
Yes,
the phony Islanders owner.
that is
That's one of
fantastic.
my favorite ones. I enjoy watching Gary Bettman get conned.
Yeah, yeah, that one that's great too. I mean, it's like my favorite might have to be like the Magic Moment one, but I have to stop it halfway through before like the team falls apart. Like just the Penny and Shaq stuff is nice or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I don't know if they planned for this to. Obviously, they don't know that the Avs are winning the cup, but it was very nice that it happened to coincide with this great run for this to come out in like the same 2 week span.
So ideally, the if you look at history, 1996 Colorado Avalanche win the Stanley Cup. That's the so now we're talking about this unrivaled series.
Yeah,
96 Avalanche win the cup. 97 Red Wings win the cup. Fast forward a couple of years. 2001 Avalanche win their second cup. 2002 Red Wings win the cup. 2022 Avalanche win the Stanley Cup. 2023 the
we'll
Red
see.
Wings are building a good team. They're in the Eastern Conference. The Avalanche still have a good team in the Western Conference. We could see a Red Wings versus Avalanche Stanley Cup final for a repeat of history for the Red Wings trying to, for the third time, win the Stanley Cup the year after the Colorado Avalanche.
That'd be pretty crazy. I think even that first the '97 one, they actually went back to back at that point. I think they went '97, '98 if I have seen that
I think
properly.
so, yeah.
So yeah, that would be pretty crazy to see. The last bit of hockey stuff we teased it in the opener though, but what'd you think of Shoresy?
It
Huh?
was very good. It was funny. It was very much just for the love of the game type of feel. And I know I said this earlier that I would bring it back from Shoresy to the real NHL. The difference between the Lightning and the Avalanche is the Lightning love to win and the Avalanche hated losing.
Perfect. Yeah. I didn't think I could like something like modern stuff that isn't like serious, like Stranger Things is on right now. Like outside of that sort of stuff, I didn't think I could like a show more than Letterkenny, and then like Shoresy comes along and like to explain the whole, you know, Jared Kiso plays Shoresy in Letterkenny, but you never see his face until the Shoresy episode. And it's just him with his tooth out and he grew a beard. That's all the character is, and like the way the show was put together too. I've watched a lot of behind the scenes things on it. Almost every person in that show is a former hockey player of some depiction. The
Yep.
guy that plays Hitch was a former first round NHL pick. He actually has a book out called Tales of a First Round Nothing because I guess his career didn't really pan out on the NHL level. And it almost pulls you back to if you ever watch like back behind the scene things on like when the movie Miracle got made.
Yep.
There's this quote where it said it was much easier to teach hockey players how to act than to get actors and teach them how to play hockey.
Yep.
So really a lot.
The only actor in Miracle was the actor who played Jim Craig. And even then, when they put the mask on for the action scenes, it was an actual goalie.
Right.
The only time you saw that main actor who was playing Jim Craig was with the mask off. Everybody else was a pure hockey player.
And like the guys in this, the Dolo, and like basically everyone they bring in was an AHL or NHL level player at some point in their lives. I think the gyms even were like, at a smaller level or whatever. They shot this whole thing in Sudbury, in the actual town that they claim to have been in. They used that actual barn. All that was really cool, and I'm already looking forward to like a season 2 for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think that's gonna wrap it up, guys. I think Nick said it perfectly, though. That is the difference between loving to win and hating to lose. And congrats again to your Avalanche.
Real quick, I'm going to throw this out there. Cale Makar is going to be, by the end of his career, the best player in the world. Not just defenseman, but player. He is the first player ever to win the Hobey Baker, the Calder, the Norris, and the Conn Smythe. The Hobey Baker is the equivalent to the Heisman.
Hmm.
It's the best player in college hockey. He won the Calder Trophy as Rookie of the Year. And this year he's won the Norris Trophy as Best Defenseman, and he won the Conn Smythe as the playoff MVP. He is the best defenseman in the NHL right now, and he skates like Connor McDavid. He is scary, and as of 50 minutes ago, he has won the NHL's Fan Choice Award for Best Goal of the Year. Go give that goal a look. The overtime winner 3-on-3 against the Blackhawks and Marc-Andre Fleury. Go give that a look and tell me that's not the best player in the NHL come 3 years' time.
You hear that, guys? You got some homework. Go look into that goal. Nick, I appreciate all your time, not only this episode, but like I said, you've been on a lot lately, and you've helped us get through this NHL postseason. We've learned a lot from listening to you, and I appreciate it, man. Hope to see you again sometime soon, too.
Yep, will do.
All right, guys, thanks for listening, and have a good 4th of July. Be good to somebody. See ya.